Okay, so JumpCloud, you've just produced fairly recently a new report, and I'll have to read this out because it's quite a long one. So, State of IT 2024, the rise of AI, economic uncertainty, and evolving security threats. So, I suppose the first place to start would just be a little bit of background. What was the thinking behind the report? What did you want to find out? And who did you talk to, etc.
Absolutely. And first, thanks for covering it. We think it's an important piece. And in full disclosure, this is actually the sixth edition of it. So JumpCloud is compiling a arsenal of information in this very interesting sector, the SME sector, over the last, again, 6 iterations of this. So we're watching all these trends sort of evolve. Just the basics about it. Each year, it's a blind survey. These are not customers. We are going after IT in the SME. So categorize that as companies that are roughly 2,500 employees, I think is the threshold number, and below. And there, in this particular iteration, there were 1,200 companies that were surveyed. So basically, we're looking at speaking to managers, directors, up to vice presidents, people who have budget control in IT. And those are the folks we ask the questions to.
Okay, and then in terms of the sort of the headline findings, I think there was something, perhaps no surprise, that AI was front and center, and also I guess security as well. But just the sort of headline, and then we'll maybe drill down a little bit into further details. But what was the big discovery, if you like?
For sure. Talk about a tale of two stories. There was a pretty interesting dichotomy that went on as we dug into the data. Yes, AI, people are super excited about it, but there's a hesitancy, and there actually is the data's proved it's not quite a priority, believe it or not. So you have to sort of decouple excitement from the reality of its implementation. And again, to be very clear, we're talking about the world of IT, not companies writ large, where AI is finding itself in lots of different areas, from engineering to sales and marketing. We are specifically focused on, again, IT, those that support access control and infrastructure within companies. So they're generally, about AI, and then we'll move into some of the other, I think, more pronounced concerns they have, specifically, more global security concerns. With AI, there's cautious optimism, which means they are embracing it in concept, but in the world of IT, believe it or not, there's sort of like IT is like the forgotten child right now in terms of AI. All the sexiness of it is seemingly in other parts of the organization. So IT doesn't have at its disposal or open source variants yet to leverage in their specific use cases. So that and the great unknown of it. Switching over to the security vein, and not just about AI, but just security issues at large. Here's the reality of what we saw from 2023 and like the look back of the year, and then what's looking forward into 2024. SMEs are in the squeeze. They are really the most exacerbated example of companies in a market that is getting squeezed by the macroeconomic conditions. They're in fact the most sensitive to these large swings in the market condition. So what does that mean? Budgets are not there. That means they can't get the people that they need who may harbor the expertise to focus on very specific aspects of IT. They need the automation, but they don't know necessarily where to turn to. And all of this is leading towards, especially in the world of security, a lack of training to their employee bases, which typically IT is on the hook for in terms of anti-phishing campaign training, hardening laptops, like the basics of what you think an IT team would need to do. They're now constrained by because of these macroeconomic events. So the report goes into pretty explicit detail on this.
Okay, and just picking up a little bit more on the AI side first. I think it basically suggests, and I think you alluded to it already, but people are excited by AI and they see lots of opportunity potential, but they also have a number of genuine concerns. So, how would you characterize? Is it overall a positive, or are the barriers to adoption still quite significant? I suppose if you
Yeah, in the world of IT, I think it's gone past. I mean, excitement is there. It's gone past what is, this is a shiny new toy. I think IT, and I know IT sees the use cases if they can instantiate these open source technologies, or hopefully companies that are in the world of IT, ISVs, are bringing it through their products and services. But here's the dark side of it. There is a concern that data, specifically when AI obviously at large is about the consumption of data, the manipulation and interpretation of the data, and then of course a service or value is returned back to the user of the AI in some way. This comes at the expense now, in certain circumstances, of the company's data having to be put in a public forum, generally speaking, which could be construed as insecure, so that it can be learned and commingled with other patterns of data, so that the value can be returned back to the company, right? When you think about that use case and think about IT use cases, let's think about who has access control and what's on their machines. And would you want all of that data being commingled in a public setting? And while there's a lot of, quote, assurance of your data is safe, I think IT and companies at large have been burned enough that there's enough hesitation before they start just lobbing their data and critical information about their company into places they are unfamiliar with. So that's sort of the dichotomy. They see the attraction of it, but at what expense? And we're in the earliest stages of this, right? So when we see how rapidly bad actors, nation states, are leveraging AI to do their bad work, this just causes pause by IT and security teams to start to use this technology. So this is sort of the moment that we're in. I think they want assurances that vendors or open source consortiums are going to harden this stuff up and insulate their data in some way.
Okay, so a bit of uncertainty in AI, and I think the report uncovered some other areas of uncertainty. If memory serves, around sort of budgets, staffing, compliance issues and stuff. So I don't know if you can perhaps expand on some of those as to what other concerns the report uncovered for SMEs at the moment.
Absolutely. There's like a treasure trove of information that we're uncovering just in this one aspect. And it's rooted in some of my earlier statements, which is companies, especially in the SME, are living in this contracted macroeconomic condition. Contracted meaning they're under pressure, meaning they're small. Their companies that they are delivering services to are affected. So you can see the daisy chain or domino effect, and the SME is sort of impacted financially by this. So here's what we saw. First and foremost, IT can't hire. They just don't have the budget to go and hire the staff in order to perform the functions. What we're seeing is typically now a ratio of roughly one IT person to manage 100 employees. In many cases, without proper tooling, without proper automation, that's an unwinnable ratio. They're just undergunned. They're going to be covered by tickets and just swarmed by the type of workload that's required. And that's a bad position for them to be in. This is where corners are cut, where vulnerabilities are exposed, and it's just not a good place to be. The other side to this is that during the heyday, and by that was only 24 months ago, when people had budgets and the world was on fire, and people had money to spend and people to hire, and what we saw then was this land grab of tools. So let's just buy all the tools. And now we're seeing that these companies have, in some cases, upwards of 10 tools to run a specific area of IT. it could be for security and device management, it could be access control. They just have this cacophony of tooling that has redundancy and it has overlap. So now what are they supposed to do? Many of them are contractually obligated to, move forward with these companies because they signed terrible deals during the heyday when everybody had money, and now nobody has money. So this is a real condition that IT staff are going through, and they're desperate to learn how to consolidate. How do we eliminate the fluff, meaning what is really required, and bring down the total number of tools that they have, controlling budget in that way, which is really where now we're seeing companies who are in this condition looking for platforms. Like, how can we have, one set of platform-based tooling that can do our jobs and help automate and do those things, as opposed to integrating, again, a phalanx of tools. And with it comes, the integration burden, the security burden, the budget burden. That's 10 different vendors I still have to deal with. That puts a whole domino effect again into my organization. That means my finance team has to have 10 disparate conversations to, negotiate for tooling contract. This is a waste of time, a waste of money. So the survey goes into detail about how folks are trying to think about new ways to reclaim that budget.
Okay, and no surprises. I'm guessing that you uncovered that cybersecurity, security, whatever, is still the number one. It persists. It's the number one challenge for folks. So is there anything, shall we say, new on the horizon other than because let's say it's been there for a number of years. The constant game is, the bad actors seem to get, one step ahead of the people that are trying to stop them. But is that just still carrying on, or are there other significant sort of new things at play?
Yeah, I mean, there's always new things. You're correct in saying, the security problem is an evergreen problem, unfortunately. Now, look at everything I just spoke to you about, and limited budgets. We have now largely the move to remote work. And these are patterns. So the truncation of money, elimination of money and budget, and a whole new operating model that many traditional IT people are still trying to figure out, even though they were forced to go through it during COVID. Now, many of these companies' theses have changed to say, you know what, this is actually an effective way for us to do business and to operate our company. Let's stay remote or have a hybrid mix. And IT is under the gun. So in this particular circumstance, the newness aspect is, how does a traditional IT person get educated, know what to do, what tools to buy if tools are a part of it, to both provide access to those now remote employees and to ensure the highest level of security of those employees. In the old days, by the way, were only, quarters ago, a few years ago, pre-COVID, those were, quote, the old days. It was a very well patterned, set of operational processes that an IT person would have to go through. They would buy computers, laptops, things like this. They would get delivered to the office. They would provision and sort of prepare the machines. The person would be in the office. They could work and sit next to the person to get them onboarded to the machine. Now that is not the case. So how do they perform those functions? How do they work in a world that is generally virtual, where they may never even see the employee? So these are huge challenges for many organizations that either weren't born in the cloud or don't have progressivity in terms of their IT staff and stack. So these are all sort of the major concerns that companies are looking forward, even for 2024, trying to get right. Beyond that, I would say this. Again, this survey was about the SME. We feel the SME is a totally underserved market. Everything is about the enterprise, the enterprise, the enterprise. Guess what? The SME, there's millions of companies globally in this target sector whom are already driving major economies, who are unicorns, and just by virtue of their employee count doesn't make them small, right? So what does this mean? They're the new targets for the bad guys. SMEs now, because of the rich level of IP and things that bad actors and nation states want, are harbored by the SMEs. So they are deliberately targeted by nation states and bad actors. They know, the bad people know that many of these companies are moving remote. This is a prime opportunity to take advantage of weakened network security, weakened device security, weakened identity security. And this is just the new frontier, both for solving. IT in the SME must solve for this. Meanwhile, the bad actors already have the advantage. They're using AI. They have sophisticated capabilities to know who is remote and who is not, and how to fish them and convince them to do things that their IT team and security teams don't want them to. Remember my prior point about security training? This is, and the lack of it, this is the moment where the bad actors understand this.
Okay, so in terms of the landscape you described, I believe that not the whole solution, but part of the solution, I think that the report uncovered, is that SMEs are looking to MSPs, for example, the channel I get, but MSPs in particular, they're putting more trust in them to help them navigate this landscape. Perhaps you can just again enlarge on how that's coming about.
Yeah, you know, a moment ago I said this is the moment for bad actors. It's the moment. I would say the sort of coming out story of the MSP. Now, MSPs are long in the tooth. They've been around forever in many ways. Historically, the MSP serviced micro companies like dentists and doctors' offices, or architecture firms, law firms. You know, companies that didn't necessarily want to have an IT team. You would hire a MSP to do some of that traditional work. Well, fast forward, MSPs now are solving critical holes for the SME. Go back to my prior statements: lack of budget, lack of training and expertise. So these are the voids that MSPs are uniquely and filling in very bespoke and strategic manners. Example, there's sort of two variants of MSPs. There's the traditional MSP, which is they cover all things IT, right? Now, there's even versions of MSPs. I'm assuming your audience has heard of them, like MSSPs. So they're the MSP, but for the security issues that the SME may have. So how to harden laptops, think about network security, improve zero trust architectures and philosophies for companies that are moving remote, but don't know how to do it in a remote world. So these versions of MSPs who are specialists in these cases, again, this is their moment to shine. It just, very selfishly, JumpCloud services both direct IT teams and MSPs, right? MSP over the last 24 months is the sort of the leader in terms of gross revenue driving into JumpCloud. It's incredible. MSPs are looking for more sophistication in the services that they can bring. So this, again, is the moment. They know that teams just don't have the budgets anymore, and MSPs and MSSPs can be looked at as cost-effective specialists to supplement these, frankly, overworked and understaffed IT teams.
And in terms of the sort of the ending of the report, which obviously encourage folks to go and have a look at, but I believe you've come to some, if not conclusions, some lessons and some thoughts to share with SMEs. So if you're able to sort of summarize those, at least for us now, and I say folks can go and read them up in full, but yeah, please do. That would be great.
Absolutely. Two are very quick. We've sort of poked at it a lot. One is, got too many tools. How do we consolidate tools? So that's a theme. We saw that in the data that were very present in the report. The other is leverage MSPs. So we poked at that within the data, and without question, there's a deference now to MSPs. So those two first bodies are pretty interesting. The survey goes into deep detail into it. The other aspect that I kind of want to go a bit deeper on, we didn't necessarily talk about today, but we're finding in the report is this. SMEs in particular are trying to figure out how to prepare for the future. So they've just been through, obviously, call it the world's biggest fire drill of remote work, being forced to do that. Now it's becoming an operational, there isn't operational excellence yet in this world. So preparing for events like this, that's the first point. The other aspect is sort of related to tooling is these these SMEs and IT leaders in SMEs, what they're trying to do is figure out how to not get locked in. They're trying to figure out ways to work with, a more of a diverse set of vendors than one monolithic vendor. And that gives them the type of flexibility and future proofing of their business. Example, what we've seen is companies now that they're moving remote, they need a way. Many of them are traditional sort of quote unquote Microsoft trained IT professionals, and frankly, old school MSPs are similar to this. Now that they're workforce engineers, marketers, designers, they want to use Mac, Apple products. There's a whole dearth of education, tooling, etc., by these traditional IT and MSPs. So savvy IT leadership is saying, how do we, this is an area where we need to future proof. How do we not get locked into a vendor or someone that only speaks one language, one vendor language? So this is a major theme that we're seeing. Our report uncovered, but frankly, the 200,000 organizations that we service, who are all in the SME, are also signaling back to us, give us freedom of choice, help us insulate so that when we decide to make changes to our quote IT architecture, that IT architecture may mean the way we work, the tools we want to bring into the organization. How do you help us govern that, manage that when we may not understand it? So these are huge, huge themes looking forward.
And on that last point, I'm intrigued because obviously early in the conversation you said people are looking to reduce the number of tools, so that suggests a certain amount of consolidation of vendors, but they want the freedom to choose as well. So I guess this is where the MSPs potentially come in again, because you can deal with one sort of organization and underneath them there's a whole variety of solutions. So just, I suppose, your thoughts, I won't say they're contradictory, but how people balance those two things to consolidate with less vendors but still give themselves choices and, as you say, not get locked in.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. So I think IT now is becoming sort of woke enough that they need an ability to predict the future, as we just talked about. There's the logical plays of massive vendors. Look at them broadly. There's Microsoft, there's Google, there's Amazon, just three, right? That occupy a huge amount of budget, right? In the cases of progressive IT, they don't want any one of those three to necessarily be their owner, right? They want to have the flexibility to drive their business in directions that they choose, meaning that the company chooses, not the vendor that they have chosen just to run the IT aspects of their company. So as an example, we're seeing, we think utilizing Microsoft Windows is wonderful, but we really love Google Workspace. That's what our employees prefer. So how do I have flexibility when the vendors of the world are trying to drive them towards just use our whole entire stack, right? This is an incredible, by the way, as a sidebar, this is really a very interesting set of kind of vendor warfare going on. You should bring your popcorn and watch this go down. But largely, it is about how does an IT team ensure that they can have that flexibility, pick and choose what they need to use for the best experience for their employees. Now, the problem is if they do pick and choose disparate types of vendors, a little bit of Google, a little bit of Microsoft, maybe some Amazon, and how can they control those environments uniformly? That's the problem. That's where platforms come into play. And I think this is really what IT is trying to solve for. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that's great. I'm a lot clearer. So, yeah, I mean, it's been a great conversation, Greg. I say I'd urge folks to go and look at the report, to get the level of detail. But you've given us some great insights as to what's going on. And really appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. And thank you, Philip, so much for the op just to come on and speak with you. And yeah, we hope the folks in your audience see value. It's pretty interesting data and report.
It is a very interesting time, and the report is great as well. So thanks very much.
Cheers, my friend.